Okay, good evening, everybody. Wednesday night around 8:35, and crazy days for all of us. I think that there's something very powerful to keep our schedule. Like those of us who are working really hard to socially isolate ourselves to prevent the spread of this coronavirus. So we're in our homes, and we're trying to not interact with too many people, but we're also trying to keep a schedule, trying to keep life as regular or as calm as we can. And what do we do? You know, I remember when I'm digressing, and I haven't had a lot of time to prepare for this class, so it might be a little bit of a of a just sharing of some of my thoughts, but I think they're all Torah source, so hopefully it'll be meaningful, and we can all process some of what's happened to us together. The need for some kind of seder, some kind of order to our lives, however much we're thrown into the deep end, so to speak. And they say when my children were applying to go to yeshiva, they're going to learn in full-time Jewish learning. One of the questions that they would get asked in the interview would be, how do you spend your free time, right? When it's not structured for you, when you don't have things that you have to do, right? So as kids, you have to go to school, and you have to do your homework, and you have to eat your dinner, and you have to brush your teeth, and there's things that we structure our lives with, and they become us. And many of us, I'm not working. My job is, I guess, on hold, and so I have more time. However, my children and my grandchildren moved in to our home, so now it's busy taking care of them and being here with them and being focused on them a little bit more in a way that I wasn't when they were living in their own home. So that's why it's a little bit hard to find mind space to think a little bit more transcendently. And many of us are getting inundated with all sorts of news reports, and we're hearing the same things over and over again. So let's ground ourselves a little bit. Let's go to the Torah reading. And I imagine for most of us, if we were going to synagogue on a regular basis on Shabbat, most synagogues, I believe, are shut. There's not going to be a public Torah reading of the end of the book of Exodus. We're not going to publicly read it. However, it doesn't mean that we don't read it. We could take a book, a Chumash, a Bible, whatever you have, and you could read the Torah portion, and you could understand some of the concepts that are coming out of it. And we do truly understand that Torah is applicable to us in every generation, right? So you could say, oh, well, when I'm this, then it applies to me, but now I'm living a different life and it doesn't apply to me. It really does. And it's our job to find in the pages, in the sources, in our tradition, in the expounding of everything, to find lessons that resonate well with each one of us. We're all different people, and we're all kind of like trying to figure out how to think and how to act and how to speak. So I think let's go into the Torah. Let's read a little bit, or pull out a little bit, some of the lessons from the last two Torah portions of the book of Exodus. And we've spoken a lot over the last few weeks about when the children of Israel came out of Egypt and the sea split. We had that, and we had coming to Mount Sinai, and we had the revelation God at Mount Sinai, and we had the Torah given to us. And now Moses is and he comes down and he sees the people with the golden calf. We spoke about that last week. And now in this week, we're at the end of the book of Exodus. The two portions are called, Vayakhel and Pekudei. So Vayakhel is about assembling. All the people were assembled. If you remember, we were assembled before when we were ready to receive the revelation of God at Mount Sinai. There was assemblage. There was a coming together of the people as one heart. We were ready. We had the intention of combining ourselves together to receive the word of God, to cleave ourselves, to marry God, so to speak, to have this relationship with God that would be broken through the generations. We the Jewish people have that connection that was forged. We were married to God at Mount Sinai, and God gave a covenant to us, and we gave a covenant to Him, a pledge, a vow that we would stay connected, and that we would be, quote unquote, His firstborn. We'll somehow represent Him in the world. We have a job to bring holiness into the world, and we have a job to bring holiness into the world now, even when we're in social isolation and we're not going out and we're not having programs and we're inviting lots of people to our homes, and we're not doing things out in the physical assembling of people, right? It's this week's Torah portion is assembly. It's about assembling the people. And here we are in our own living rooms, in our own homes, and we're assembled because, thank God, we have the technology to be able to assemble ourselves like we are, whoever's listening, whoever's going to listen, like we're connecting. I'm sure lots of people are listening to different things online. They're listening to classes. They're figuring out what to do with their children. They're figuring out what to do with themselves, how to use your time, right? So go back to the beginning when the question that's asked of a young person going off to learn in a seminary or in a yeshiva to learn Torah all day, the question that's asked of them is, what do you do in your spare time? Because what you do in your spare time is what is a reflection of what you value. Like, who are you? What is it that you do? Do you exercise? Do you cook? What do you like to do? How do you spend your time? Do you like make the effort to go and take care of other people? Are you like, what kind of person are you? And perhaps it's reflected in how you spend your spare time. And we have, perhaps many of us have, some of us, not all of us, of course, some people are still working and some people are doing a lot of work online, and I'm not speaking for everybody, of course. Perhaps I could just speak personally. I have my house filled with little children and my other kids, so I'm feeling like I don't have the headspace. But I think a lot of people are beginning to realize they have more time. They don't have to get up and go somewhere. They don't have to. A lot of people are that, sadly, or I don't know what the quite adjective is, they're not working as much, or they have more time. How do we spend that time? What are we doing with that time? So here we are at the end of the book of Exodus. The people are assembled. And that's the beginning of this week's Torah portion, when we're assembled. And I want to talk about, or I want to think about what it means to be assembled, what it means for us to be connected to other people, right? We talked last week about how we count Jewish people. We don't count by pointing. We don't count you're one, you're two, you're three. We count by taking a half a shekel. We count by taking something and adding it to something else, because we're not alone. We are not an island. Man is not an island. Man is a part of a whole, and we really understand that now. And I might be digressing a little bit, but this sense that we have to take care of each other. We have to recognize that there's this bigger world out there which we are, the world that which we are connected to in ways that we didn't really understand before, and that we have to be responsible for each other. That we have a job to be responsible for each other and take care of each other, however we do that. The idea of the half shekel, that we're not a complete unit unto ourselves, that we're a half, then we count you as a half and you're the other half, and we understand that we're part of a whole. But this is also something that's borne out by Moshe when he assembles all the people. So at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, Moshe called the whole community of the children of Israel to assemble. And this is the day after Yom Kippur. This is the day after Moses comes down with the second tablets of... this is the day where he comes down after the first... he's gone up and he's asked forgiveness of God. God said, yes, I forgive you. And he comes down with the second tablets of stone, and he says to them, these are the things that God commanded to be done. And now what's the first thing we learn about? We learn about Shabbat. For 6 days work may be done, but the seventh day shall be holy for you, a day of complete rest to God. Whoever does work on it should be put to death. You should not kindle fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Moshe spoke to the entire community of the children of I stopped for a second in case it wasn't working. So these are the things which God had commanded you. And now he's asking, again, we're talking a recapitulation. Bring all the things, all the ingredients, all the materials that are going to be used to construct the Mishkan, the tabernacle. We've been talking about it before. The tabernacle is going to be the structure that the Jewish people are making to create a home, to create a place for God to reside within our domain. And much of the language of what we read about in this week's Torah portion and all of the Torah portions speaks about the creation of the Mishkan being parallel to the creation of the universe. God created the universe. God created the universe. He created the universe in order to create us to exist. When God created the universe, there was this, we've talked about this before, this notion of tzimtzum, of God withdrawing, God hiding himself behind the veil of nature, hiding himself in the universe that we can't see him, we can't touch him. Can we know him? Can we feel him? Do we know he's there? Are we looking for him? Where we have a perception of individuality, we have a perception that we are separate from God. That is our perception. However, Jewish teaching, Jewish understanding is that we are not. Ein od milvado. There's nothing other than God. There's nothing other than God. We exist in a way that we perceive ourselves to be independent. The greatest parable that I know for this is the baby, the womb, the fetus inside the womb. The fetus perhaps has some kind of intellectual understanding. Let's say you are a fetus that can think, and you're inside a womb. You imagine this is your existence. There's no other existence. This is all that there is. Wait, I'm divesting a little bit, but the idea that this is it. This is all you know. There's nothing else other than this until the day you're born. And you're born and you're in a different world. And while you were in the womb of your mother, you had no idea who your mother was. You were in your mother. You couldn't know your mother because you were in your mother. And the walls of the womb separate you and prevent you from seeing your mother. You have to be born in order to grow up, in order to then have a relationship with your mother, because your mother is as a baby. You don't have a separate existence from your mother. You and your mother are one. Right, as the baby doesn't know he's an independent existence. It's younger adult years where we feel like we know everything. We've got it. We know how it's all working. So this whole parable of the baby, the fetus in utero, being born, then growing up, and then having a perception of their mother. Right. So let's superimpose that on the creation of the world. When God created the world, and made space for us to exist. And we began our existence before we came to Mount Sinai. We were a nation that was emerging. We were a nation that was more like that fetus or in utero, that baby that comes out and doesn't understand how to exist. We have to be led like a child. You have to be led. The generation of Egypt, coming out of Egypt, coming to Mount Sinai, was a generation like a child who has to be led and has to be directed and has to be shown what to do. And here's how you do it. And this is what you're going to eat. And this is where you're going to sleep. And this is where you're going to go. And you're going to come out. And I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to look after you. That's God before Sinai. Then we had the Sinai experience. And then we said, we've spoken about this before, Na'aseh v'nishma, I will do and I will listen. I will do and I will listen. I will understand. I want a relationship with God. I'm going to have a relationship with God. And that relationship with God is what we formed, that marriage that we formed at Sinai. So that's like we've grown up. We're not the baby coming and being led. Now we've grown up. We have a relationship and a marriage with God. That's Sinai. And then post Sinai, we're being let go. We're entering into a more of an adult phase. And the adult phase is a phase where we might think and perception that we know everything, but we really have to come to a place where we realize we don't know anything. And this whole coronavirus pandemic, on some level, for me anyway, is bringing it home. I don't know anything. I really don't know anything. I don't know what's good. I don't know what's up. I don't know no, that's not true. We don't know how this is going to play out. We are out of control. We don't know really very much about what's going to be tomorrow or next week. And there's perception. There's something pushing us, I think, to let go, right? Right. There's only so much we can do. There's only so much we can worry about. There's only so much that we can prepare for. So on some level, let's just let go. Let's go. Let God run the world. God's going to run the world. I'm definitely not saying that we don't follow directions and that we do what we're told to do. And I think that's a Kiddush Hashem. That's important for us as a Jewish people to follow the rules of what the health professionals and what the society around us is telling the departments of health. You have to stay in your home. You can't have parties. You can't go to shul. You can't be in mixed groups. You can't do those things. This is a life and death situation. I really believe this. I think that we are if we are socially congregating, where it's against our role as Jewish people to bring life and to foster life if we don't follow these rules. I think we have in our Jewish tradition life being the most important thing. We save lives. That's a huge focus of everything we do. If you save a life, that's more important than anything. Saving a life is more important than anything. And following the rules, I believe, is saving lives. I heard a rabbi speaking, Rabbi Freundlich in Montreal, and he said, isn't this amazing? By sitting at home, by minimizing our social contacts outside, we're saving lives. We have no idea how many lives we're saving by sitting on our couches. It's an amazing concept. We are saving lives literally by not doing anything. By sitting on our couches, we are saving lives. And we're benefiting from that. If we don't even know what we're doing by not going outside and not interacting with other people, and not, because it's really hard when you interact with other people, they touch you. We're used to touching people. We're used to doing ththings that we become people who are, transmitting, whether we have it or we don't have it. We don't know. We don't know if we have it. Children probably, have no idea that they have it, etc., etc. So if we socially isolate, we are, says Rabbi Freundlich, and I think it's true, and I think I'm hearing it from a lot of places, by socially isolating, we are saving lives. And there's nothing more important than saving lives. So therefore, there's nothing more important than staying home and sitting on your couch. Okay, now the question is, what do we do with our time when we're on the couch? So Moshe comes down from Mount Sinai. And it says that his face is aglow. He is beaming. There's like radiant light coming out of his face. He is so infused with spirituality that he became part of as he was up in the heavens, and he had this interaction. He learnt Torah with God. He comes down. He's beaming. There's this light coming out of his face, and it's so bright that the people can't see it. He has to wear a veil. It says in the Medrash. But this idea of connection to God, this idea of being transcendent, this idea of trying to reach up into the heavens and connect something up there, but it's not just up there, it's down here. So when God created the world, when he tzimtzumed, when he pulled back and created a veil so that we perceive ourselves as being separate entities, our job is to understand that we're not. Our job is then to create, which God tells us to do. God says, and it says over and over and over again in the next two Torah portions, over and over again, God says to Moshe, tell the people. God says to Moshe, tell the people. Tell the people what? Tell the people to build this Mishkan, build this tabernacle, take everything, give your gold and your silver and your wool and your turquoise and your this and your that and your gems, and just give it. And what do the people do? They give with glee. They're running to give. They're so desirous of being part of this building of the Mishkan. The last time they were asked to give was to build the golden calf, right? So that was giving misdirected. Here's giving, focused giving. We're giving to construct this tabernacle. And if we do it right, if we do it exactly as God teaches us, and we don't even know how to do it, we just put our efforts in. Who's building the Mishkan? So Moshe gets the directions. Betzalel is the master architect. Betzalel is the great-grandson of Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, and her son was Hur, and then I think it's Uriel, and then Betzalel. So Betzalel is our architect. Betzalel is given wisdom. God imbues him with wisdom to learn. I mean, these were a slave nation. They don't know how to build a beautiful tabernacle with all the different tapestries and all the different gold objects and the table and the menorah and the Ark of the Covenant and all of these things that go, all the altars, everything that's going to go into this space, into this area, this Mishkan, is God imbued wisdom. And they're saying, I'll do it. I'll put my effort in. I'll try. I'll do it. And whether or not you are successful isn't in our hands, but we have to follow the directions and do the best we can. But Salel, Moshe, all of these people are showing us this is what they did when they built the Mishkan. And in this week's Torah portion, which I said is a double Torah portion, by the end of this week's Torah, the book of Exodus, we get to the point where they have constructed it exactly as God commanded them. Every specification perfect. And what happens? God's presence rests and dwells, comes down. And can you imagine to be there when all this work, like, is it going to be successful? Am I going to be able to do it? Is it going to be right? Can I contribute? I want to give. I want to give. I want to give. I want to give. And when we give, when they gave, when the request went out for the Jewish people to give, to build the tabernacle, when that directive went out, please give, what happened? People rushed to give. And I think one of the ideas of rushing to give is that giving is what God is. God is the quintessential, existential, big, like the God is a giver. God is good. God is, like, these are things that we understand about God. God, it gives. That is what defines God, is a giver. And we are enjoined to be like God. The name Bezalel is this architect who's given the wisdom to build the Mishkan. Bezalel. He is in the image of God. He's a shadow of God. He is a reflection of God. Whatever. He is a man who is given the wisdom to be godlike, to know how to build, to know how to collect everything and create this structure, right? And we want to, I think we really want to be godlike. And that's what God wants us to be. He wants us to be B'Tselem Elokim. We are B'Tselem Elokim. But how do we express that? How do we express being the image of God? Give. And here we are stuck in our houses. I can't invite this person for Shabbos. I can't. So let's figure out how we're going to give. What are we going to do? How are we going to look after each other? How are we going to, like we don't have, we're given it now. Time. Do it. Like, you have time. Find ways, whatever way, whether it's in your home or by calling people or by sending gifts or picking up groceries if you're still able to go get groceries, whatever it is. I think that this is a time where we could really take it up a notch to be more givers. Like, really, I'm searching, find more ways to be a giver, because I don't know, who knows? I want to add another thing, because this is something I've been thinking about, and I don't know how this is going to go over, and I don't know who's listening, but I'm going to say this because this is what I'm thinking. So the fear of death that is pervasive in our society, denial of death, right? Prior to the pandemic of the coronavirus, I really think that our society operated from a standpoint where we denied the fact that we're going to die, right? We live as if we're going to live forever. We're doing our thing. Everything's great. We're in control. But we're not really in control, but we think we're in control, and we're going and we're doing, and we have a meeting and we go to our meeting, and we have a program and we go to our program, and pretty things like pretty much go like in the main, maybe we have a few hitches or this doesn't really work out so well, but we're doing our thing. And then in there somewhere is a denial that we're going to die. I really think that, because I think if it really was front and center, if we really understood that we will die, we're all going to die, that is just the nature of the beast. We are not going to live this life forever. It's going to be a different life, and we are going to transition. Our soul will leave this body and will leave this physical world. It will happen. So if we make it more front and center, how will we then live our lives? People who have had near-death experiences many of them, I understand, live a radically different life after their near-death experience. They had this experience, it shook them up, it made them understand that they're not here forever, and therefore they lived their lives more fully in the real concrete knowledge that they're not going to live forever, and they're here for a purpose, and there's something that we have to do. And maybe one of the things I'm seeing anyway is a heightened awareness, obviously it's people are people, and there's an anxiety level, but I think part of the anxiety comes when we're all going to get it and die, and maybe we will, and maybe we won't. I don't know. But perhaps if we took that message of, I know I'm going to die, I'm not going to die one day, and maybe it'll be sooner, maybe it won't. Am I frightened of it? Yes, maybe I am. Am I scared of it? Am I scared of pain? Yes, maybe I am. Yeah. But right now, I have today. I have what to do now. And what do I do now? How is it important to live my life now? How is it that I spend my free time now? I don't have to go to work. And I don't know. And what am I going to do with my now? Right now, today, tomorrow. Yes, we're going to plan. And yes, we're going to worry. And yes, we're going to be on the phone. And we're going to do a lot of different things. But I think maybe at some point, how do I become more godlike while I'm in my home? By reaching out to people, by giving classes online. I don't know, but let's be inventive. So what's the next thing that comes in this week's Torah portion? The next thing that comes in this week's Torah portion is to keep the Shabbos, to keep Sabbath. These are the things God commanded to be done for 6 days. It's the first thing that Moses tells the people. Observe the Shabbat. Observe the Shabbat. What is Shabbat? Shabbat is a time, cocoon, where we have the possibility, we have the potential, we have the opportunity to stop and to live in that time and to recognize God in the world and to develop that relationship, to develop the relationships with our families, with our friends, with our communities, with ourselves, to go in, to take the Torah portion. And maybe you go to synagogue and you listen to the Torah portion and it's so fast. We don't have to go to shul this week. And our children are, if we're not observant of the Shabbat, there's no sports games, there's no movies to go to, there's no concerts to go to. There's almost an enforced Shabbat coming. It's coming. We're going to be in our homes with our families, most likely take a walk, whatever, but we're going to be cocooned away in our homes for Shabbat. So isn't this an opportunity to do this? Isn't this an opportunity to say, all right, I'm going to light Shabbat candles before sunset on Friday. I'm going to sit with my family and have a meal with them. I'm going to say a prayer, a blessing. I'm going to eat challah. I'm going to make challah. Maybe I'll make challah tomorrow. Why not? Why not? Let's try it. It's almost enforced on us to be in. Let's get off our internets. Let's get off our phones, even for the evening, or if we can, for the whole 25 hours. I mean, really, we have an opportunity here that's given to us, given that there's nothing really else to do, to try that. And maybe it will help us. Maybe it will calm us. Maybe it'll give us a break. Let's not listen to the news for 25 hours. What are you going to do anyway? There's nothing you can do. All you can do is be with your family. You can be quiet. You can pray. You can read the Torah. You can, read some Torah thoughts. I don't know. I'm going to write a Devar Torah. You read that. I don't know. But somehow let's take it up a notch. Let's go up into the heavens a notch. All right. So here's the thing. When we go from God creating the world to create a space for us, and we go from us creating a mishkan, a tabernacle, so God can reside in our midst. But then we don't have our synagogues to go to. We don't have our little mishkans to go to. We don't go. There's nowhere to go. We're going to stay home. And we're going to say, maybe my heart is my mishkan. Maybe my heart is where I'm going to look to increase my spirituality and my connection to the divine and my connection to my family. Maybe that's where I'm going to get that inspiration. I'm going to get it from within. I'm going to do it from in my family. I don't have to go to synagogue. I can't go to synagogue. I can't. And what we can do is we can bring the synagogue, we can bring divine energy, we can bring God into our homes. We can do that. We can do that. We can have challah, we can have... and now I want to talk about this idea of what God told us to do at Mount Sinai. Okay, we have a whole Torah, we have a lot of laws, we have a lot of commandments, yes, but really at the bottom line is about becoming a holy people. Holy. What does it mean to be holy? Holy means is the opposite of weekday, of mundane, of chol. Right? So we say in Hebrew there's kodesh, holiness, and there's chol, which is like mundane and ordinary. Right? And we can speak about it. We can say, okay, we're going to take the mundane and we're going to elevate it. What does that mean? It means when you make bread, like some of us make bread at challah bakes, or we go, right? But there are ingredients that go into the challah bake that have meaning behind them. When we add sugar to our challah, to the dough that we're going to make, to the ingredients, we're adding sweetness. We're saying, may our lives be sweet. And we can still do that. If you're making challah tomorrow, if you want to do a challah class, I'll make challah with you all. But when we put sugar in, have the intention, have a prayer that our life should be sweet. When we add yeast, let's have a prayer, let's have an intention that we should be elevated, that we should somehow rise up, we should become more of our better selves, we should become more of who we have the potential to be. There's an elevation, there's an expansion. Let's love more, let's do whatever intention that we have on that yeast, Put it into the challah. Keep adding different ingredients. Each ingredient has a different intention. And then when that challah is made and you sit down on Friday night and you eat it and you say a blessing over it, I bet you it's going to taste different. It's going to be an elevated challah because you put your work into it. We're talking about Bezalel who built the Mishkan. We're talking about us who are making challah. Doesn't matter what it is. We're infusing our work. Our hands should be blessed. We're asking God in many of our prayers, we ask God to bless our handiwork. That which we put work into, please bless it. What does that mean? It means make it more, make it successful, make it so that it's good in the world. Make it so that the world is better because of the work I put in. Like, let's get down to what's basic. It's not important. Whatever is not important is not important. What is important is important. And those things now are becoming more important. I really think that the heightened sensitivity that we have to what's important and what isn't is coming to the fore, right? It's not important if I have 25 pairs of shoes. It's important if my elderly neighbor has food. It's important that I don't get angry with my family. It's important that what I think about, that's important. How am I going to control my thoughts? How am I going to stay calm? How am I going to be my best self? How am I going to become more godlike, right? So we're people who had that pledge and had that desire and that commitment, and we are in relationship to God, and we are the vessels to bring godliness into the world. So we have God creating the world. We have us creating a Mishkan. We had God saying, here's Shabbat, here's your Mishkan, here's your tabernacle in time, right? You have a space and you have a time, and you can infuse those areas with holiness, with connection to the transcendent. Separate it from the mundane. We do it all the time. We do it, as I said, with challah. We do it with candles. You can light a candle, fine. But if you light 2 candles on Friday before it gets dark, and you have an intention that you're bringing holiness, you're bringing divine energy into your living room, into your dining room, into your living room, you're bringing calm, you're bringing something special into your home, I think you'll feel it. I hope you feel it. I hope it's there. I hope you can access it, because I think that that's what we're being asked to do. So we have challah, and we have what's interesting is in the Mishkan, I think it's all women listening. In the Mishkan, there's copper mirrors that went into making the washing basins that the priests used to wash their hands. So when the priest would come in to the temple to do the service, he would wash his hands and his feet in this vessel called a laver, L-A-V-E-R, and it's made out of copper. And the source of the copper was the mirrors that the Jewish women in Egypt used to beautify themselves. When the edict came from Pharaoh to kill all the Jewish baby boys, right? So we all know that Pharaoh said, all the baby boys are going to get thrown into the river and they're going to die. And we're going to, because he was frightened that one of the Jewish babies was going to be the redeemer of his slaves. And I don't want to go there. But the mirrors, the women, so the men said, "Oh, we're scared. We don't want to give birth to babies. We don't want babies who are going to get killed by Pharaoh. We're not going to have relations with our wives. We're not going to have sex anymore. We're so tired. We're out in the fields. We don't even bother coming home. We're done." What do the women do? The women take their mirrors, their copper mirrors, and they beautify themselves. They look in the mirror and they make themselves all pretty, whatever, and they go into the fields and they seduce their husbands. And they have sex and they have babies because they saw the need to have babies. Yes, Pharaoh says the boys are going to drown, but it's actually Miriam who said to her parents, "You can't do that." But anyway, the point is that the mirrors, on some level, could be say, "Oh, we don't want to honor the mirrors. The mirrors were used, to beautify the women." But no, the reason to be beautified had a holy reason, the holiness of the sexual act, such that it would bring babies into the world, would bring connections between husbands and wives. It's holy. It's holy. Sexual relations in the proper context is holy and elevating. So let's put that into our equation. Let's know that. Let's understand that. Let's think about that. It's not just a gratification of a physical need. It's a spiritual gift that God gave us to connect with another person in a holy way. So let's do that. Okay, whatever. but I think it's about what I'm trying to express is the transition of something that could potentially be weekday and mundane and taking it up a notch into a holiness, because we're asked to be holy. And we can work on being holy, even if we can't do all the things that we want to do. We have more time to work on being holy by taking our physical world and elevating it. When, there's blessings to say on pretty much everything. We could say a blessing on lighting the Shabbat candles. We could say a blessing on eating our challah. These things that we can elevate. I'm trying to think of some other examples of things that we elevate. The spices that we smell on that we make a bracha on the Havdalah spices after Shabbat spices. We're gonna make a blessing on them. What's interesting about the incense actually is that the incense that was brought into the temple, we spoke about it last week, but it had 11 different components, and the Jewish families in the time of the temple that were responsible for bringing the incense for the use in the temple. This is really cool. So that family, the women in that family, didn't ever wear perfume. They didn't wear perfume at all. Why didn't they wear perfume? You think they'd be perfectly able and willing and positioned to put perfume on themselves? The reason that they didn't is that they didn't want anyone to suspect them of having taken the incense for their own personal gain. That the spices, the incense that they're responsible for bringing should be so pure that there's never even a negative intention or perception or anything that someone might think about them, that they took it and used it for their own personal gain. So they didn't wear perfume because they didn't want to incite that negative feeling that somebody might have about them, like, oh, you took it. And what's really interesting is when we get to next week's Torah, the second of this week's Torah portion, which is Pekudei, it's about, again, an accounting of all the contributions that the people gave to the building of the temple, like everything of the Mishkan. So everything was accounted for. There should never be a suspicion. Moses wanted it all written down and all accounted for so that no one should suspect Moses of taking any of the wealth that was being donated. And you think, well, that's crazy. No one's going to suspect Moses. He's the humblest of all men, and he's the highest, and he spoke to God face to face, and he was this man, and he was able to go into the heavens, and of course he's not going to steal. But we're human. We're human. We are incredibly human. We are incredibly human. And in that incredible humanity that we are, we have the capacity to even think that Moses could sequester something for his own gain. And so in order to not, there's an accounting, so that there's written down exactly what came in and what was used for what, so that there's above suspicion. And Moses, who is above suspicion, is even more above suspicion because of our capacity to sort of have an evil perception of another person, or an unfavorable perception of another person. And even in our days, again, in our world, we have to be very careful that no one person should be in charge of all the monies of any organization or any institution. And I had started my own organization, and I don't want the money. I don't want to be responsible to making sure that it's used properly. I don't want that responsibility, and I don't want to police myself. I want someone else to police me, right? So maybe that is something that we can all take away from this. Be careful. But again, here we are talking about our stuff. We're talking about our stuff and the stuff that went into building the Mishkan. We went and we gave it. And I'm wondering if part of the message is of this time is going back to that idea of being a giver. The people brought their contributions and they fell over themselves, so to speak, to give. Maybe we should be like that now. Now we should be giving more to the food pantries. We should be giving more to the people who we know who are out of work, who literally cannot pay for what they need. I mean, I don't know where we're going with this. And some of us have a bit of a cushion, and other people don't. And maybe this is part of what our work is to do now, is to say, how much can I share? How much can I give? Because I'm living today and I don't know if I'm going to live tomorrow. Yeah, of course you're not going to give everything away. But again, just to think about that, if what we can do now is be more holy and be more connected to God and be more working on our soul, so to speak, and to lift that What do we do? How do we do that? So let's see. The idea that that whether or not we're successful is a God calculation. That when the people created this Mishkan and they gave, and Bezalel was given the wisdom and Moshe was given the direction, right? So Moses and Bezalel and all these people were given God direction. They were given wisdom by God. It's a gift, given a gift of wisdom of how to construct this tabernacle. And at the end of the day, they can't do it alone. They can't do it alone. We learn about Moses. He doesn't know how to build the menorah. He really doesn't know how to build the menorah. And so God says, I'm going to show you. And he shows him an image, a fiery image. And he has this image and he still can't do it. And at the end, he throws it into the fire and it comes out. But, the same thing with Bezalel. Like, there's no way as a slave, a recently freed slave, he had any possibility of knowing how to build this Mishkan. And God gives it to him. God gives it to him. And I think that we all have these gifts. We all have different gifts. And if you go back to the word of the assembly at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, the assembly, we're assembled. And we're recognizing, as much as we think we're separate, we're not, we're part of a whole. And we're learning that lesson very clearly, how interconnected we are, how much we affect each other, how much we are responsible for each other, how much we are in touch, quote unquote, physical, metaphorical touch with each other. And that at the end of the day, how this plays out is beyond our capacity to control. Like, again, we're going to do our social distancing and we're going to do all the things we're told to do. We have to do those things. Like, we really have to do those things. But then, like, the downturn and when the downturn comes and how it, like, that's not in our hands. And somehow to pull back and not have fear. How do we get to a place where we don't have fear? How do we let go? I was talking to someone about the analogy of being on a roller coaster ride. You get strapped into a roller coaster ride and it looks like it's fine. It looks fine until you're upside down and you're going, in circles and you're screaming because you're so out of control and you don't want to go upside down. I would definitely be screaming because I'm scared of heights and I don't like rides. But but then at some point, do we let go? Can we let go? Can we let God in? And maybe that's part of the potential work that we could be doing this time when we're not going to synagogue and looking for it outside. We're working on it here in our hearts, right? It says God will dwell within us, within you. I'm going to dwell in you. God wants to dwell inside us, not outside of ourselves. Like inside us. Like, I don't quite know how to put that into different words, but there a way where we can understand that our connection to God is really, really, really close. And is the veil of the separation being lifted a little bit? Are we understanding that, yes, we're all going to die, but it's not about that we're going to die. It's about how we're going to live. It's about how we're going to live. I don't know, like the unfolding of this story. It's still unfolding. We don't know. But along the way, are we going to be kind? Are we going to share? My son was in the parking lot of Walmart coming out having bought some toilet paper. I don't know why we're all crazy buying toilet paper. And somebody offered him a lot more money than the toilet paper was worth because they wanted toilet paper. I don't know. It could lead to bedlam, but I don't know. Like how do we take it down a notch? And maybe Shabbat is a way to do that. Let's do Shabbat. Let's turn our phones off for 25 hours. Let's have our meals with whoever's in our home. Or maybe if it's just me alone. I had a very close friend who was alone last Shabbos, and she doesn't like to be alone. She's very unhappy being alone. And somehow she lit the Shabbat candles, and there was a peace that descended on her home, she said, and she was very anxious about it and very not looking forward to it. And she was reading more, and she read the Torah portion in more detail, and she saw things that she never saw before, and she wouldn't have seen them if she was in synagogue, just keeping up and trying to follow along. So Moses says at the end, as the tabernacle is completed and as it's ready, like now will God's presence descend? Will God's presence descend? And obviously it does. And he says, it's Pekude. It's at the end of Pekude when the whole tabernacle is erected, and so they're waiting to see, have we been successful? Did we do it right? Do we have the right intentions? Do we give with all of our hearts? Is there no jealousy involved? We're like pure assemblage of the Jewish people doing something together to elevate and to bring God into our lives. And what happens? So he sets up the courtyard surrounding the tabernacle and the altar, and he put up the curtain at the entrance to the courtyard, and Moshe completed the work. We're done. We did the work. We got to Shabbos. We got to the end of our work. And the cloud covered the tent, and the glory of God filled the tabernacle. We were successful. We're blessed. We're connected. God forgave us for the sin of the golden calf at that time. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud rested there, and the glory of God filled the tabernacle. God came and rested on the tabernacle. Is God resting in our homes? Is God resting on our hearts? Are we opening ourselves up for that? Are we putting our efforts in? Again, I don't know what the efforts are. I don't know how to answer that question, but I think it's a question that each one of us maybe could pontificate on and think about in a really serious way, because it is about bringing spirituality into the world and prayer. So Moses prays that God will bless our work. And go back to creation, go back to the very beginning of creation. We understand that when God created the world, everything was created in potential. Everything was created in potential. And then Adam and Eve were created. And when they prayed, then the blessings, the herb, everything grew. But it wasn't the rain. The rain fell. They prayed for rain. The rain came, and all the potential manifested itself and became real. I think this is an amazing idea, amazing understanding, amazing teaching, is that our prayers are like turning the tap on. God is ready to put blessing into the world. When God created the world, everything was in potential. It's ready to be actualized. What was needed was Adam and Eve to pray for the actualization of the potential. It's potential until you pray for it, and then it's there. It's ready for you. All it needs is you turn on the tap. How do you turn on the tap? Pray. Pray. Put your effort in and pray. And that's what we can do. We can put our effort in and we can pray, because prayer is turning the tap, turning the tap. Turning the tap. That's what prayer is. And there's an idea that on when we finish eating, when we have our meal, and we have on Friday night, let's say, we have our meal, we have our challah, and then at the end of the meal we say, thank you God for our food. We have a whole grace after meals that we say, and it's quite long. But the point is that we're asking God to continue to bless us. We just had this amazing meal. Whatever the meal was, it was amazing, right? Even if it was tuna fish. It's an amazing meal. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And please bless us. Please bless the work of my handiwork. The way of the world is God blesses our handiwork. We have to put some effort in. You're not going to have challah unless you try to make challah. You put the ingredients together and you knead it and you do your best, and hopefully you'll get, you'll have, please God, my challah should be delicious. Please God, when I put work in, it should be successful. Please God, when we pray for the world, when we pray for health, when we pray for, a speedy getting on the other side of the curve, we pray for a flat curve, whatever it is that we're praying for the world. And that, I would not minimize the importance of praying, right? And there are a lot of initiatives in the Orthodox world to have prayers at certain times, for people to fast, for people to say Yom Kippur davening. The prayers that we say on Yom Kippur, people are going to, tomorrow morning, there are thousands of people around the world who are going to take the Yom Kippur prayers and they're going to say them tomorrow. They're going to fast tomorrow, right? For the world. Yes, we're stuck in our homes, but we can still do something, because our homes, yes, they look physically separated from the world, but we're not. We're all interconnected. We're all there's nothing but God, and there's nothing really that separates us, because it's all an illusion. It's all a delusion. So I don't even know what my message is. I think the messages are a few. I think the messages are let's find a way through this cloudiness. The cloud rested on the temple, right? The cloud rested, and Moses waited outside until God called him in. And there are times where we get called in, and there are times where we have to recognize that it's a calling, that we're being called to do something, right? I just, as a religious person, as a believing person, God's behind this, and there's something we all are going to learn from this, whether it's our near-death experiences, our fear of death, whether it's becoming better people and becoming more connected to God, or understanding what's really important, not the designer handbags, but the lady next door who needs food, whatever that looks like, whatever that computation is in your life and my life and our lives, and recognizing that interconnection and that love, and the love and the compassion and the giving and the desire to bring God into our lives, into our hearts, into our homes, into our communities, taking care of each other, checking in with each other. All of these things are creating us to maybe take that moment to make Shabbos more, make Shabbos a little bit more. Whatever it is you usually do or don't do or never did, one thing, take it up a notch. Like, focus on that, make it more intentional, make it more holy. And it's holy because, not because you're eating bread on Friday night. It's holy because your intention is that I'm eating this bread because it's Friday night, because it's Shabbat, because this challah is something God wants me to eat. I want to connect myself to God. I'm going to say a blessing on the bread, not just words. I'm saying I understand that you, God, are the source of this bread. When Moses blesses the people and asks God, it's a prayer and a blessing, right? So Moses is blessing the people. The work should be blessed. Your work should be successful. All of this effort, all of this giving that we did to build the Mishkan, it should be successful. And God heard the prayer, and he opened the tap, and his, so to speak, metaphorical, and his presence rested on that tabernacle. I think we can do, we can do the same. It's not about me. It's about what we know from our Torah. Our Torah says we can do that. We can bring divine presence into our midst by praying, by being godlike, by being kind, being compassionate, being giving. But that's how we're going to bring God, so that God is less hidden and more manifest, and can continue to give what he wants to give to us, right? So wherever we've gone, whatever we've done, however in control we think we've been, we're not in control, and we know that on a whole different level. I know that on a whole different level, and I really pray. I really pray that we can band together in spiritually, religiously sanctified ways to elevate ourselves, elevate our speech, speak well, speak kindly, speak positively, elevate our speech, elevate what we listen to on the TV, on the radios, on the the internet, that we have all this time. Maybe some of us has more time to engage. Use your time well. Don't squander it. Don't do nothing with it. Like these transition times, we have transition times. There are transition times. Like, okay, I woke up this morning, my alarm went off. I don't know why my alarm went off. I don't have to get up. I don't have anywhere to go. Right? And I'm late. My initial thought was I'm late, but I'm not late because I'm not going anywhere. But I need to know how to spend my time. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? How am I going to speak? What am I going to listen to on the internet? What am I going to think about? How am I going to share? Who am I going to call? How am I going to try to be part of a bigger community? I don't know. Let's all brainstorm together. And please, God, the prayer is that that it's a speedy other side. That there's good health for all of us, and all those who are sick should be healed. And that we should live on the other side of this pandemic in really different ways, really meaningfully different ways after all this. And I hope to check in again with you all next week. Thank you for listening.